Yeah, were you not married to staff?
It's kind of like...
Yeah, would she have answered the phone if I'd have called? Of course not.
You could have called me up. You could have texted
6
me.
o'clock?
Yeah.
I don't have your number.
It was very good.
It was on the chair of one of the guys. Found it on the chair. Thank you.
tune. Lovely way to enter Shabbat. Thank you to our choir. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos. Bruchim Habayim. Welcome. It's always interesting when we take a piece whose words we know so well. Right? Shalom Aleichem, we think, it only goes with one melody, and maybe we've heard rumors of another melody. But what a beautiful setting that helps us. It's almost a different midrash on Shalom Aleichem, a different interpretation of the words of welcoming the angels into our space. So thank you for such a beautiful piece. And I believe that's the first time you've done that. So thank you. In a while. So, let's take a nice deep Shabbat breath in and out. Please join me. And allow yourself to be present. Allow yourself to let go of anything that's stuck right now with you, and just be here right now in this lovely moment all together. We turn to page 120. And it's an honor to invite up Urban Phyllis Ross to light and bless our Shabbat candles tonight. And let's give ourselves a little more permission to welcome Shabbat in. Just let it in a little bit more with L'cha Dodi, page 138.
Thank you.
And now we remain standing. Let's turn to page 144. Page 144. And by the way, just a reminder, if you have one of the books that has 2 page numbers in the corners, you're following the one in the brackets. You probably already figured that out. But page 144. Page 149 at the top, let's read together. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv ha'aravim.
Oh
Page 154. Simplicity. The reason I wanted to point that out tonight is there's as Canterbury was just saying before the service, there's an interesting convergence today and tonight and this weekend between a number of important events. Number one today is International Women's Day, right? So a day where we celebrate the contributions of women to society, where we're aware of places where women are not yet totally equal. And we celebrate the women in our lives who have been so influential. Then, number two, this weekend, as you may know, celebrates the 30th anniversary of the Women of the Wall, which we will be marking much more in depth tomorrow morning, if you can join us for our Shabbat morning service at 10:30. The whole service tomorrow morning will focus on the contribution of Jewish women composers to our liturgy, so most of the songs we'll be singing will be by Jewish women. And we'll be also talking about the history of Women on the Wall, how far they've come, how far they still have to go. You may have seen today, this is the third convergence, is it's Rosh Chodesh Adar 2. We're in a leap year, which means there's a second Adar, a whole extra month added into the calendar, just inserted in right here. Purim, which always falls during the month of Adar, gets moved to Adar number 2. And so Purim's coming up, of course, Saturday night, March 16th for us. But the Women of the Wall, as they do, they go to the wall to pray on Rosh Chodesh, and there were terrible attacks today by little girls who were bussed in from their yeshivas to attack and stop the prayer of the women who just wanted to pray at the wall and celebrate 30 years of trying to do so. So here we are, sing the song of men and women joining in understanding and respect. And with the month of Adar, what I happen to love about that is that Purim is such a wonderful holiday for celebrating the heroine of Esther, right? And Vashti. So we have a lot of nice feminine energy coming up and converging today, and I thought it's worth celebrating that for just a moment. So please join me in the entire reading on page 159 before we sing Nisa Mosa together. Sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect, the song of God's miracles and earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come. The song of a land once ravished by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more. The song of a world redeemed, the song of peace. tefillah begins, I invite you all to please rise. Shabbat Shalom. We had an interesting debate in Scrollers last Shabbat. If you remember, it was during the snow. There were only like 5 of us here. We were talking a lot about Shabbat because the derivation of the traditional 39 prohibitions of Shabbat were found in or were inspired by last week's Torah portion. One of the interesting debates, it's not really an either or, but we had a conversation about, is Shabbat a commandment and or a gift? And what's the difference? Because clearly, of course, it's both, right? But as we think about Shabbat, is the idea that it's commanded meaningful? What does it mean that God says you must rest? You must stop the work of your daily lives and you've got to pause, and you must. It's a commandment. And we were talking about Shabbat as a gift. The opportunity to do so, the fact that our lives are able to be filled with a day that's sweet, that allows us to return to ourselves, to our families, to our passions, whatever is important to us. So I just wanted to bring you that idea, that debate that we were having amongst the 5 of us who were here last Saturday. And to remind you that we often have a much larger group on Saturday mornings. You're all always invited to come and study Torah with us Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. So is Shabbat a commandment? Is it a gift? Is it both? Which inspires you? So I hope tonight you're feeling Shabbat. You're enjoying Shabbat. I'm certainly enjoying being with all of you. Let's take this beautiful feeling now. Let's take this spirit that we are creating all together, and let's send it to people in our lives who are ill, who are suffering, who are in pain, who are injured, who are suffering in body and mind and spirit. And let's send them our prayers. Let's send them our love. Let's send them our blessings. Tonight, we are especially sending our prayers for Refuah Sholema to Reagan Konecki, John D. Nicola, Nancy Schwab, Miriam Swidler, Larry Mancini, Charles Sabat, Debbie Clymer, Burl Bellows, Carrie Bellows, Cindy Rishal, Dovie Ben-Meir, Arthur Myers, Iris Clark, Stacy Reed, Nan Kraszewski, Fred Schaefer, Sophia Younglove, Daphne Rosenberg, Heather Waters, Autumn Jade St. John, and Megan St. John. Who else are you thinking about tonight, whose name you might want to share aloud to add to our list? Pamela Pell.
Peter Haynes.
Children of Cages. Ian Barkley.
Harry Sachs.
Mishabera Chavotenu Avraham, Yitzchak v'Yaakov, v'Imotenu Sarah Rivka, Leah v'Rachel, v'Yivarech v'Yirapeh et kol ha'cholim ha'ela. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Bethlehem, and Rachel, bless and heal all those who are in pain tonight, all those who are suffering, all those who are injured, all those who are praying for return to peacefulness and to wholeness. Baruch atah Adonai Rofeh HaCholim, we praise you, God, who cares for the sick. And let us say together, Amen. Let's join in the words of Debbie Friedman's Mishberach on page 371.
Before us.
thankful for those in our lives who do heal, who do recover, who do return to some sense of peacefulness and wellness in their lives, even if it's a new normal. We're always grateful for the ways in which we do heal. We're also so thankful when people travel far away and are able to come back home safely, as well as anyone who has escaped danger. And so on behalf of all those in our lives who have experienced these gifts, we praise you, God, who allows good things to happen in the world around us. And let us say together, Amen. So what simchas do we have tonight? What smachot? What happy occasions are you all celebrating? Any birthdays, anniversaries, exciting things going on in your lives that you'd like to share?
I've already shared this from my house in Seoul.
Oh, I think you get 2 weeks at least of announcements out of that. Mazel tov on selling your house.
After 2.5, almost 2.5 years.
Your house is
Trying.
Wow. Mazel tov. Really. And yeah, I mean, you get more mazel tovs coming. You deserve it. Yes.
My son is 20 today.
Oh, birthday! Oh my gosh! Please tell Joe that we wish a big Yom Haledet Sameach. That's wonderful. Big new
Just to say
decade.
we remember playing with his Transformers here.
Under the piano? Yeah, forever, yeah. But be sure to remind him. Yeah.
It seems like a little thing, but it was special. This afternoon, my nephew Joe came and had lunch with us, and we sat and talked for hours. And I haven't had a conversation with him in years. It was just really lovely.
Thank you. Wow, thank you for sharing that with us. Beautiful. And how sweet and how special to do that. That's wonderful.
My daughter was home from college this week, and on Thursday, she came, once a month I go and sing at Chesterfield's, and this month she came with me for the first time.
Oh, nice.
So that was really, I mean, for my 20-year-old daughter to come with me and sing, that was really nice.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Since we're on the subject of sons' birthdays, my son Julian will turn 12 on this month.
Oh, happy almost birthday to Julian. Yom Haledet Sameach to him, and many, many more.
I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, but if you're bringing up women's dead of war and think about women for once. I have a young lady who I work with. She's 26 years old, and regards to politics and what you believe in, she's off to Guantanamo Bay for 9 months on deployment. She's a reservist.
Wow.
Not just her, but there's 150 young men and women between 90 and Brantford who are going to Guantanamo Bay for 9 months to keep the peace, as she says.
Wow.
So just a thought for
We wish them all the best.
all the other people taken for granted. I never thought of that.
Yeah, it was just a group from Connecticut, or just happened?
Well, it's from
Employment battalion from Canada.
and
There's
she
40 prisoners in Guantanamo.
But 150 people from here?
Yeah, 150 to watch them.
And she signed up because she's a very bright young lady, couldn't afford to go to college, so she signed up and enlisted as she helped with that.
Hopefully it's a good 9 months for all involved. Wow, thank you for sharing that. And if you have a chance to tell her that we're all going to be thinking of her, please do. Yes, Jane?
In my family, my grandfather wrote a history of my father's side of the family that goes back several hundred years, and my father did not update it, nor did he translate it. So we finally found someone, a 95-year-old volunteer at the Rio Beck Institute, to whom I send a photograph, take a picture with my phone, I send it to her. That's all I know. I don't know anything else about her. And she transcribes it and types it, so it comes back to me in German. And my brother and I are going to try to finish the job.
Oh, did everyone do that? No? Okay, so let me try to repeat it so everybody can hear. So your grandfather had written quite a bit about your family's
With
history.
photographs and documents.
Documents and
It's
photographs.
wonderful treasure.
Your father received it, but didn't update it at all.
Because-
And it's also in which language is it originally? It's in German. And so now Jamie is working with somebody at the Leo Beck Institute, sending photographs on her phone of the pages which are being transcribed and typed out, so that then they can be sent to somebody who can translate
No,
them
no,
from German.
my brother and I are going to do it.
You are going to translate from the German.
It's going to be a,
Wow, wunderbar.
not the easiest job.
Yes, well, that's,
There's an app for that.
there is a
No, you cannot.
Wow,
but
but
but the idiomatic German you can't do on Google, it doesn't work.
But how incredible to do that for your family. What a treasure.
We can't, otherwise it'll be lost, and
Yeah.
it would be dreadful. So, that's.
Thank you. Well, thank you for sharing these sweet simplas with us as well. It's really wonderful to get to stand alongside you throughout all the moments of your lives, including the good ones. So thank you, everybody. This has been the week of forbidden conversations in so many ways. This has been a week of words being said out loud which make others uncomfortable, or which are painful for us to utter. This has been a week filled with wrestling of identity, of beliefs, or even wrestling with our loved ones over difficult events or difficult issues. And none of these issues is easy, and nor will any of them be solved simply in any kind of black or white manner. So first, last Sunday, we here at CBSRZ had the privilege of welcoming actor and activist Gilly Getz as he performed his one-act show called Forbidden Conversations. In it, he reflected powerfully on the concept of forbidden conversations related specifically to Israel amongst Jews. He himself was Israeli-American, raised by fervent Zionists who were determined for him to be a Sabra, a native Israeli from the moment he was born. Gilly noted the moment that he realized that he had entered into what he calls a forbidden conversation with his own father. A moment when Gilly, in the midst of his deep love for Israel, also criticized Israel in such a way that it challenged the very core of what his own father believed about Jewish identity and its connection to the land of Israel. So his impetus for creating the show was the recognition that American Jews have become so fearful about talking about Israel that we've merely stopped talking about Israel. Rather than engage or argue or even risk offending our loved ones in case we disagree, we just don't talk about Israel. Rabbis have stopped preaching on Israel. So many are afraid to teach about Israel, and so many don't even know where to start. No matter what our individual beliefs were or are, Gilly Getz hoped that we who were there that day would talk about them nonetheless. That we would maintain our connection to each other and to Israel, even if we disagree on the very meaning of the word Zionism, or the current state of Israeli politics, or the treatment of non-Orthodox Jews in Israel, for instance, or the rights of Palestinians in and around the land of Israel. In forbidden conversations of any kind, we lose the opportunity to find nuance or some kind of middle ground. We feel like we must either be for or against, period. Never somewhere in between. We've lost the ability to talk to one another in too many ways, to care about one another, to disagree with respect. And thus, we no longer engage with those on the other side, whatever that might be. Last night, CBSRZ hosted another forbidden conversation. It's been a very busy week. We tackled questions related to the debate over gun control, which is currently taking place in the Connecticut legislature. Our Social Action Committee chose this topic because it is so current and so raw and so difficult for so many of us to discuss. Passions, of course, run incredibly deep, and thus, even more than hearing from both sides, we also wanted to model the importance of just sitting in the same room together, speaking to each other with patience and with respect. Interestingly, at first, we invited Connecticut Against Gun Violence, CAGV, to present their policy recommendations based on the current legislation. Jody Winch, who was instrumental in planning this powerful event, our member, explained the goal of the program to CAGV, as well as the idea that we were purposefully inviting a group of gun rights supporters to speak as well. Now, sadly, once Connecticut Against Gun Violence, a very well-respected and active group of gun control advocates, heard that the CCDL, the Connecticut Citizens Defense League, which is an NRA-backed statewide advocacy group, would also be present, the CAGV pulled out of the event. This conversation was forbidden. The very idea of talking or listening to each other was forbidden. At the last minute, and for very sad reasons, Guilford resident Michael Song agreed to join us. Michael Song is the father of Ethan Song, who was killed accidentally last year by an improperly stored gun in his friend's house. The Song family is now advocating for Ethan's law, which is before the Connecticut legislature, which strengthens the laws related to safe storage of firearms in homes, especially around minors. So this forbidden conversation between gun rights advocates and gun control advocates was actually going to take place right here on this BEMA. Representatives and folks from both sides of the debate were present last night, including some of you who are here right now. And we all agreed on ground rules for the evening. Essentially, we were going to afford each other dignity and respect, even when we disagreed on the most fundamental level with each other. We knew we weren't going to convince the other side of anything major, but we could experience what it felt like to return to a time when we knew how to speak to each other civilly, and we could even do so when we disagreed. Now, surprisingly, or perhaps not so surprisingly, there were a number of areas in which both sides found common ground, particularly related to this idea of safe storage of firearms. Both sides, those for and against various forms of gun control, agreed that being responsible owners of firearms required that they be stored in the most secure manner, while still allowing the guns to be accessed in an emergency, which seemed to be a primary concern for many of the owners. The two men from the two opposing organizations shook hands many times during the night. I was sitting in the middle, so it often was just right over me, so I was right there. They even called each other buddy a couple of times throughout the night. Activists from both sides lingered after the evening had officially concluded to speak further in one-on-one conversations, and at some point I had to kick them out of the building because it was like 10 o'clock, but it was really neat to witness. So the forbidden conversation happened, and we're all the better for it. So finally, the most complicated forbidden conversation of the week. Didn't happen here at CBSRZ, but I'm sure many of you have engaged in discussing it in your own lives. And this is a conversation surrounding comments made over the past few weeks and even past few years by Minnesota House Representative Ilhan Omar. 3 of her comments and tweets are quite troublesome, and they were summarized by New York Times op-ed columnist Bret Stephens. He wrote, "Israel has hypnotized the world," she tweeted in 2012. "May Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel." Last month, she wrote that U.S. support for Israel, especially concerning AIPAC, was all about the Benjamins, baby. A few weeks after that, she told an audience in D.C. that, "I want to talk about the political influence in this country that says it's okay to push for allegiance to a foreign country." Confronted with criticism about the remark from her fellow Democrat Nina Lowey, she replied, "I should not be expected to have allegiance or to pledge support to a foreign country in order to serve my country in Congress or serve on a committee." Bret Stephens further explains, "It's a case study in the ease with which strident criticism of Israel shades into anti-Semitism. For those who don't get it, Stevens goes on, claims that Israel hypnotizes the world, or that it uses money to bend others to its will, or that its American supporters push for allegiance to a foreign country, repackaged falsehoods commonly used against Jews for centuries. It's just old already. People can debate the case for Israel on the merits, but those who support the state should not have to face allegations that their sympathies have been purchased, or that their brains have been hijacked, or their loyalties divided. As the criticism of Omar mounts, it becomes that much easier for her to seem like the victim of a smear campaign, this is Bret Stephens still talking, rather than the instigator of a smear. The secret of anti-Semitism has always rested in part on creating the perception that the anti-Semite is, in fact, the victim of the Jews and their allies. Just which powers that be are orchestrating that campaign? Why are they afraid of open debate? And what about the bigotry on their side? Ideas once thought of as intellectually uncouth and morally repulsive have suddenly become merely controversial. It's how anti-Zionism has abruptly become an acceptable point of view in reputable circles, and it's why anti-Semitism is just outside the frame, bidding to get in. End quote from Stephens. Additionally, 3 Jewish members of Congress and her Democratic colleagues, Brad Schneider, Elaine Luria, and Josh Gottheimer, wrote an op-ed for CNN, which said, "We were disappointed by the comments of our colleague, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, suggesting supporters of Israel push for allegiance to a foreign country. The dual loyalty canard is one of the more common and most pernicious attacks used to discredit the other. It was deployed in the last century against Catholics, like Al Smith and John Kennedy. It's used today to vilify immigrants, minorities, and people of non-Christian faiths, including both Jews and Muslims. For Jews in particular, the charge has a long and bloody history that persists to the present day. A 2014 global survey by the Anti-Defamation League found that the most widely accepted anti-Semitic stereotype worldwide is Jews are more loyal to Israel than to this country / the countries they live in." Anti-Semitism matters. Our history of persecution just because we are Jews matters. And it deserves to be singled out for recognition as a particular form of hate, not to negate other horrific forms of racism, intolerance, or prejudices, especially ones that lead to violence. But we must allow ourselves to take time to acknowledge that Jews have been victims to specific and enduring hatred for a very long time. And yet, other members of the government have made disturbingly anti-Semitic statements. Other members of the government have let out what we call dog whistles to white supremacists, to the KKK, and to neo-Nazi groups. And none of them has faced the level of vitriol and condemnation which has befallen Representative Omar. So here's the forbidden conversation part. Criticism of Israel is okay. And it is legal, and it must remain legal. What Representative Omar did was clearly beyond that. I'm not arguing that. And it included these classic tropes of anti-Semitism. But why has the reaction to her statements, and not others, been so vastly different? And I propose, as have many others, that it's because she is a young Muslim woman of color. It's a lot of strikes against her. As Michelle Goldberg wrote in the New York Times, "So I think Omar deserves criticism. Criticism, however, is not the right word for what she's faced. As one of the first 2 Muslim women in Congress and the first to wear a hijab, Omar has been subject to a terrifying campaign of racist vilification, including a poster in the rotunda of the West Virginia Capitol linking her to 9/11. She is treated as a dangerous foreign interloper in American politics and the embodiment of anti-Semitism. Omar said things that are offensive, and she's a victim of a double standard. She's been held up for unique opprobrium because, breaking with America's foreign policy consensus, she empathizes with Palestinians more than Israelis." As my college classmate and author Bill Folman wrote, "Several things can simultaneously be true. Ilhan Omar is subjected to an unfair level of criticism because of Islamophobia, and Israel is subjected to an unfair level of criticism by Omar and others because of anti-Semitism. And Omar, of course, does not not believe herself to be anti-Semitic, and she may or may not, but probably isn't trying to offend. Now, whether or not you agree with my friend Bill's assessment, his point is important. Several things can be true at once. And we must take a moment to breathe and to recognize this. And the issue becomes even more painful for those who find aspects of their own individual identities being thrown into war with one another. So with permission, I share with you the heartfelt words of, I could call her a childhood friend. I was a madricha when she was in religious school. I was one of the teacher's aides. And it's been wonderful to watch her grow up. And I'm friends with her on Facebook. And here's what she wrote 2 days ago. Her name is Becky Berger. I just sort of can't stay silent on everything that's happening with Representative Omar, so here we are. I've thought about this a lot. I am a black Jewish woman. And I can't leave any of my identities at the door as I see and experience everything that is happening. I contain multitudes. I stand with Ilhan because I have spent my whole life as a black Jewish person. I have experienced deep racism in the Jewish community over and over and over again, and yet here I stand, proud as ever to be Jewish. In the face of racism in the Jewish community, people have asked me over and over to be patient, said that change doesn't come in a day or a week, said that the proverbial arc is long but it bends toward justice. They've asked me not to throw out Judaism, and I listened, and I'm still here, personally and professionally. Similarly, she writes, I will not throw out Ilhan. Y'all have heard me say it over and over and over, but I'm rooting for everyone black. Not just rooting, but holding and loving and reaching for, and even when it's tough. So what I ask is that we see the long journey ahead, and we hold Representative Omar with the same grace that we ask internally. I know in my heart the battle against anti-Semitism is stronger with Representative Omar in it. And I ask that you remember that change doesn't come in a day or a week or a month. I'm asking you to extend her the same grace so many people have asked of me over the years. And I can tell you unequivocally, it is worth it to hold on and stay in community. End quote. So this has been a week of forbidden conversations. They're difficult because multiple realities exist and converge and overlap and divide. And does that mean that we as a society must also divide? Must we tear ourselves apart, fracture our community permanently, and lose the ability to face each other at the same table even when we disagree on a fundamental level? Becky Berger's comment has remained with me since she posted it 2 days ago. There are so many forces in our country right now which would love to have us further divide, which would love to have us hate each other, to fear each other, to battle one another with ideas or even with violence. But forbidden conversations require us to resist that pull and to stay at the table. We may bleed there in front of those who are opposite us because they need to see our pain. They need to see why we are hurting, just as we should strive to see what drives them. Where are they hurting? As Becky says, it's worth it to hold on and to stay in community. So even as we wrestle, I pray that we are able to do just that. King Yiratzon, may this be God's will. keeping a very busy week. The coming week is a very busy week. So a few announcements. First, there is a white Honda in the circle with its lights on. Is that anyone's car? Is it Mark's? Is it a Honda? Does anybody mind running to him in the, see if it's his? Thank you. Tomorrow morning, as I said, we have our Women of the Wall Shabbat, our WOW Shabbat at 10:30, which is, right after Strollers, which you're always invited to come to. Tomorrow night, hopefully you signed up already for the Syrian dinner because we had to close registration for that, but stay tuned for pictures and tales of how delicious it will be. But we had to close registration, of course, so that our wonderful family who's cooking for us will know how many for you to cook. So really looking forward to that. Then on Sunday, we had originally talked about having an Anti-Semitism Part 2 event for this Sunday. It's not happening this Sunday, it's being postponed just because there's so much going on. So that's happening probably within the next 4 to 6 weeks. However, the Rabbi's Book Club is meeting on Sunday at 9:30. We've been reading The New Feminism. It's a book about Jewish feminism and just all the contributions. It kind of is another nice convergence of women's contributions to Judaism. So that's at 9:30. What else is happening on Sunday? Oh, Purim Spiel rehearsal number 2. It's not too late to join the Purim Spiel if you're still interested. It's totally awesome, if I just say so myself. It's all 80s themed, and so it'd be great if you could join us. If you have questions, let me know at the end. What else is going on? Did I get the biggest one? And then Purim. Purim itself is next Saturday night, May 16th. No, March 16th. March 16th. It's starting at 5 with our carnival. There will be food available. We're going to have a costume contest for adults and kids, so please come in costume. And then we come in here, we hear a little bit of Megillah, we sing some silly songs, and then, of course, we have our 80s themed spiel. So we do hope you will come and join us 5 o'clock next Saturday night. Any other announcements that anyone is aware of that you'd like to share? Yes.
Well, I just want to say thank you to our guests tonight because we had a little congregational sing-in starting at 6:30, and we had a lovely kind of a potluck at 7, so we could come together in community and prepare music for service. And I just want to specifically thank Norm, who is our schlepper, and heated up all the food. Really seriously though, and also to Faye Ringel and Joanna Schaefer here singing with us tonight. We're very blessed. I just want to say thank you to them. Thank you, and to all of you, of course. But a special shout out to them for coming.
And thank you for such a great idea. So there will be more coming up.
Coming in June, we'll do another congregational sing-in, and we'll, kind of come up with a nice nosh in between our rehearsal.
Oh, not black, but I'm not his food.
Oh! All right. Well, I'll be in touch. But it was a lot of fun, and it's great to be able to come together in a musical vehicle to offer in such a beautiful way.
Thank you all.
Organizing.
So let's turn to our concluding prayers, page 586 in the middle of the page. Aleinu, please rise.
Shalom.
those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. If you hear the name of a family member or friend on our Yortzeit list tonight, and if you feel comfortable doing so, I invite you to rise when you hear his or her name and remain standing. This allows us to recognize your loss, offer you comfort, and then we will all rise together to recite the Mourner's Kaddish as one community. This Shabbat, we mark the Yortzeits, the anniversaries of death for Anne Baser, Oscar Benson, Lawrence Chaplik, Saul Davis, Celeste Lewitt, Esther Pekaroff, Yetta Schreiber, Brenda Udoff, and Luis Ross. Zichronam Livracha. Who else is marking a Shiva Shloshim or Yortzeit and would like to share a name out loud?
Lawrence Adams, Sally Sack, and Luba Kaufman.
John Lucas.
May all of their memories always be for blessings. Together now we rise. We join in the words of Kaddish Yatom, the Mourner's Kaddish. Yit Gadal, Yit Kadash Shimei Rabbah, Be'alman V'rach V'riteh, V'yamlich Machuteh, V'chayechon V'yomechon, V'chayei T'chol Beit Yisrael, V'adalau B'zman Kariv V'imru, Amen. Yehei Shimei Rabbah, V'rach V'ram L'omei Almaya, Yitvarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shmei V'yishah B'rithu, La'elam Yikol Birchata V'shirata, Tushbechata V'nechemata, Da'amiran V'yalma V'yimru, Amen. Yehei Shalom Rabba V'yishemaya, V'chayim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru, Amen. Oseh Shalom V'yirmav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru, Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, and to all the world. And together we say, Amen.
And we conclude with Lo Yisagoy on page 645.
That this Shabbat and the whole rest of the month is overflowing with happiness for you. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you all for letting us sing.
Shabbat Shalom. Right, you just voted President. Who's your buffalo? What a wonderful page. Thank you. All your pieces on one side, right? Choose, I could have it. Show me it's one side, right? Yeah. You should be her up at one side. Maybe you got well, that's what I was talking about.
It's only the regular thing. Friday night.
Southwestern? Or?
Yeah, it's kind of that concept.
Yep. Yes, but that was fun. That was good. That was good.
Good. Again, but hopefully there's more people.
So Marcy, this will amuse you? Maybe?
Yeah.
So the Scott family is in Montana for 3 weeks skiing. And Deirdre wanted Olafur to kind of keep up with the Hebrew.
Okay.
So I said, you know what, he's not going to want to bring a prayer book. Right? So...
Yeah. Did you find the app?